The stars had never looked so beautiful. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood at the bridge of the Earth's Hope, humanity's finest ship, and watched the endless darkness filled with distant lights. For 30 years, humans had dreamed of this moment. They had built ships that could travel faster than light. They had united their broken planet. They had reached for the stars. And now, finally, they had found others. The Galactic Union's capital station hung in space like a jewel made of light and metal. It was larger than any city on Earth, home to billions of beings from 12 different species. Ships of every shape and color flew around it, coming and going like bees around a hive. Park Tae-ho felt his heart beat faster. This was it. This was the day humanity would join the galactic family. Dr. Kim Yuna stood beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. She had spent her entire life learning alien languages, studying the signals they had caught from deep space. She was the one who had made first contact possible. Now, she would speak for all of humanity. "Are you ready?" Park Tae-ho asked her quietly. She smiled, but he could see the nervousness in her eyes. "I have waited my whole life for this, Admiral. I am ready." Their shuttle crossed the void between the ship and the station. Inside, 12 humans sat in their finest uniforms, carrying gifts from Earth art, music, stories, and the promise of friendship. They believed, truly believed, that the universe would welcome them. The docking bay was enormous. Strange beings watched them arrive, some tall and thin like shadows, others short and covered in scales, still others that floated in tanks of colored liquid. None of them smiled, none of them waved. They simply watched with cold, curious eyes. A creature of impossible beauty walked toward them. It had silver skin and eyes like purple gemstones. Its voice was like music when it spoke, but the words were sharp. "I am Ambassador Vel of the Korath," it said. "I speak for the Galactic Union. You are the humans." It was not a question. It was a statement, spoken the way someone might say, "You are the dirt." Dr. Kim Yuna stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "We are honored to meet you, Ambassador. We come in peace, seeking friendship, and we know why you have come," Vel interrupted. "You wish to join the Union. The Council will decide if you are worthy." The walk to the Council chamber felt endless. Aliens of every kind lined the corridors, watching silently. Some whispered to each other in languages the humans could not understand. A few laughed. Park Tae-ho kept his face calm. But inside, something felt wrong. This did not feel like a welcome. This felt like a trial. The council chamber was a vast circular room. 12 seats rose in a ring, each holding a representative of a different species. In the center, a platform waited for the humans. Above them, thousands of aliens watched from galleries that stretched up toward the ceiling. Ambassador Vel took his seat and gestured for the humans to stand on the platform. They did, feeling very small and very alone. "The Council has studied your species," Vel announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We have examined your history, your culture, your nature. We will now deliver our judgment." Dr. Kim Yuna's heart raced. This was not how she had imagined it. There was supposed to be conversation, exchange, understanding. Instead, they were being judged like criminals. A creature made of living stone spoke first. "Humans are violent. Their history is filled with war. They kill their own kind for resources, for power, for ideas." A being of light and energy pulsed angrily. "They poisoned their own world. They nearly destroyed themselves before they even left their planet." Another voice joined in. "They are primitive. Their technology is 100 years behind the youngest Union species." One by one, the council members spoke, and each word was a knife. They talked about human wars, human cruelty, human failure. They showed images on vast screens, bombs falling, cities burning, forests dying. The humans on the platform stood frozen, unable to respond. Finally, Ambassador Vel raised his hand for silence. He looked down at Dr. Kim Yuna with something like pity, or perhaps disgust. "Dr. Kim," he said softly, "you have studied us. You have learned our languages, our customs. You believed you understood us. But you do not. You are animals pretending to be civilized. You wear clothes and build machines. But underneath, you are still beasts. The words hit her like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Beside her, she felt Admiral Park Taeho's hand on her arm, holding her steady. The Council has decided, Vel continued. Humanity is not welcome in the Galactic Union. You are too dangerous, too unpredictable, too savage. You will leave Union space immediately. If you return, you will be destroyed. Silence fell over the chamber. The humans stood on their platform, surrounded by thousands of alien eyes, and felt the weight of rejection crushing them. One of the younger officers behind Park Taeho stepped forward, his face red with anger. You cannot do this. We came here in peace. We came to enough. Park Taeho's voice was quiet but firm. The young officer stopped. Park Taeho looked up at the council, his face showing nothing, no anger, no fear, no shame. We understand, he said simply. We will leave. The walk back to the shuttle was the longest of their lives. Aliens watched them go. Some with satisfaction, others with indifference. Dr. Kim Yuna walked with her head high, though tears burned in her eyes. She would not let them see her cry. Only when the shuttle doors closed did she allow herself to speak. They did not even let us explain. They did not want to know who we really are. Park Taeho sat down heavily. He looked old, tired, broken. No, he agreed. They had already decided what we were. The Earth's hope turned away from the station and began the long journey home. Behind them, the jewel of the Galactic Union grew smaller and smaller until it vanished among the stars. That night, alone in her quarters, Dr. Kim Yuna opened her journal. Her hand shook as she wrote, but her words were steady. They called us beasts. They called us savages. They looked at our worst moments and decided that was all we were. But they are wrong. We are more than our history. We are more than our mistakes. Someday, they will see. Someday, they will understand what humanity truly is. And on that day, we will remember how they treated us. Not with revenge, but with truth. She closed the journal and looked out the window at the passing stars. We will remember this, she whispered. And we will rise. 150 years passed. The humans who had been humiliated at the Galactic Union were long dead. But their children remembered, their grandchildren remembered, and their great-grandchildren built an empire among the stars. Humanity had not waited for permission. They had not begged for acceptance. Instead, they had turned their backs on the Union and carved out their own place in the galaxy. 40 star systems now flew the blue flag of Earth. Hundreds of colonies spread across planets that the Union had never bothered to claim. Humans had become a power in the darkness, growing quietly while the rest of the galaxy forgot about them. Captain Lee Min-ho stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiance, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. He was young for a captain, only 35, but he had earned his rank through skill and courage. His crew respected him. His enemies feared him. Captain, said a voice behind him, we are picking up something strange on long-range sensors. He turned to see Engineer Chohana frowning at her screens. She was brilliant, everyone knew that. She had redesigned the Defiance's engines herself, making them faster than anything in known space, but she was also difficult, always speaking her mind, never afraid to tell her superiors when they were wrong. What kind of strange? Minho asked, walking over to her station. Ships, hundreds of them. Coming from Union space. She looked up at him with worry in her eyes. They are not military formations. They are running. Minho felt something cold settle in his stomach. In all the years since the rejection, no Union ship had ever come to human space. They had made it very clear that humans were not welcome anywhere near them. So why were they running toward the very people they had cast out? Put it on the main screen, he ordered. The image that appeared made the entire bridge go silent. Ships of every Union species were fleeing through space, damaged and burning. Some were military vessels, but most were civilian transports, passenger ships, even medical craft. They were not flying in formation. They were running in terror, and behind them came darkness, the hollow, the humans would later learn to call them. Machines from the void between galaxies, ancient and terrible. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. Every world they touched became dead. Every species they found became extinct. They had come from somewhere beyond known space, and they had begun eating the galaxy alive. "Get me a prisoner," Minho said quietly. "I want to know what is happening." 3 hours later, a damaged Korath ship was brought into the Defiance's hangar bay. Its hull was torn open. Its engines dead. Inside, the rescue teams found only a handful of survivors. One of them was different from the others. He wore the robes of high office, and his silver skin was stained with blood. They brought him to Captain Minho. The Korath looked up at the human with eyes full of something Minho had never expected to see from one of them. "Fear. I am High Arbiter Ven," the alien said weakly, "grandson of Ambassador Vel, who spoke for the Union when your kind first came to us." Minho said nothing. He simply waited. "The Union is falling," Ven continued. "An enemy came from the dark, machines that cannot be stopped. They adapt to every weapon. They learn from every battle. We have lost 6 species completely. Billions are dead. The rest will follow." Engineer Chohana crossed her arms. "And you came to us? The beasts, the savages?" Ven lowered his eyes in shame. "We had nowhere else to go. The hollow will consume everything. We thought, we hoped, that perhaps humanity might help." Captain Minho laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Help?" he said. "Your grandfather called us animals. Your council told us we were too dangerous to exist among civilized beings. They threatened to destroy us if we ever returned. And now you come running to our space, asking for help?" "I know," Ven whispered. "I know what we did. I know it was wrong. But please, Captain, if you do not help us, everyone will die. Every species, every world, everything." Minho stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Contact Earth. Tell them we have a situation." The message reached Earth within hours. The United Council, the governing body of all human colonies, gathered in emergency session. Images of the Hollow's destruction played on every screen. Burning cities, dying worlds, fleeing ships, and endless darkness spreading across the stars. General Baek Jiho, commander of Earth's military, spoke first. "This is not our problem. The Union rejected us. They called us monsters. Now their own arrogance has doomed them. Let them face the consequences." Others nodded in agreement. The wounds of 150 years had not healed. Stories of the humiliation had been passed down through generations. Every human child learned about the day their ancestors had been called beasts and sent away in shame. But not everyone felt the same. President Yoon So-min, the leader of Earth's government, raised her hand for silence. She was known for her calm wisdom, her ability to see beyond anger and fear. "I understand your feelings," she said. "I share them. What the Union did to our ancestors was cruel and unjust. They judged us by our worst moments and refused to see our best." She paused, looking around the room. "But that is exactly what they did. They saw only our darkness. If we turn away now, if we let billions die because of old wounds, then we become exactly what they said we were." The room fell silent. "We have built something great in these 150 years, Salmon continued. "We have proven that we are more than our history. Now the question is, what will we do with that strength? Will we use it for revenge, or will we use it for something greater?" General Baek Jiho stood again, his face hard. "And if we help them, what do we get? More insults, more rejection. They will use us and throw us away again." Somin shook her head. "Perhaps, perhaps not. But that is not what matters. What matters is who we choose to be." The vote was close, but in the end, humanity made its choice. Captain Lee Minho received the message on the bridge of the Defiance. He read it twice to make sure he understood. "We are going to help them," he said to his crew. Chohana looked at him with surprise. "Really? After everything?" Minho nodded slowly. "Yes, but not because they deserve it. Because we are better than they thought we were." He turned to face High Arbiter Ven, who had been brought to the bridge to hear the answer. Tell your people, Minho said. The humans are coming. But this time, we come on our terms. And this time, you will follow us. Ven bowed his head, the first time a Korath had ever bowed to a human. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. Thank you. Outside the windows, the stars waited. The darkness was coming. And for the first time in 150 years, humanity was returning to the galaxy not as beggars asking for acceptance, but as warriors coming to save those who had rejected them. Earth had changed beyond recognition. The planet that had once nearly destroyed itself was now a garden world, covered in forests and clean cities that reached toward the sky. Humanity had learned from its mistakes. They had healed their home and then spread across the stars, building a civilization that the old Union had never imagined possible. High Arbiter Ven had never seen anything like it. He stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, watching flying vehicles move between towers of glass and green plants. Children played in parks below. People walked and talked and laughed without fear. It was peaceful, beautiful, and somehow terrifying to him. Your world is remarkable, he said quietly to the human beside him. President Yoon So-min nodded. It took us a long time to get here. We made many mistakes along the way. We made mistakes too, Ven admitted. Perhaps the greatest was turning you away. So-min did not respond to that. Instead, she gestured for him to follow her inside. The council is ready. They will hear your request. The Grand Hall of Earth was nothing like the Union's council chamber. There were no elevated seats, no platforms designed to make visitors feel small. Everyone sat at the same level, arranged in a circle. The message was clear. Here, all voices mattered equally. Billions of people across human space watched as High Arbiter Ven walked to the center of the room. Cameras broadcast his image to every colony, every station, every ship. This was the moment humanity had waited for, even if they had not known it, the day when those who had rejected them would beg for their help. Ven spoke slowly, his musical voice heavy with emotion. 150 years ago, my grandfather stood before your ancestors and called them beasts. He told them they were unworthy of joining civilized beings. He sent them away in shame. He paused, struggling with the words. He was wrong. The hall was silent. Every human watching felt the weight of generations in that moment. The Galactic Union is dying, Ven continued. An enemy has come that we cannot defeat. They have taken our worlds, killed our people, and nothing we do can stop them. We have tried everything, our greatest weapons, our most advanced technology, our finest warriors. Nothing works. He lowered his head. We come to you now, not as superiors, but as those who need help. We come to the species we rejected and ask, will you save us? For a long moment, no one spoke. Then General Baek Jiho rose from his seat. His face was hard, his eyes cold. You ask us to die for you, he said bluntly. You ask us to send our sons and daughters into a war that is not ours, against an enemy that has destroyed everything it has touched. And for what? Because you finally realized you cannot survive alone? And, General, Ven began, I am not finished. Jiho's voice cut through the room like a blade. My grandmother was on the ship that day. She was young, barely 20 years old. She told me stories about how your people looked at her like she was dirt, like she was something to scrape off their shoes. She never forgot that look. She carried it with her until the day she died. He stepped closer to Ven. So tell me, High Arbiter, why should we care if your union burns? Ven had no answer. He stood there, silent, knowing that anything he said would sound hollow. It was then that another voice spoke, a younger voice, calm but strong, because my great-grandmother would have wanted us to. Everyone turned to look at Dr. Kim Do-hun. He was a historian, not a politician, but his family name carried weight. He was the direct descendant of Dr. Kim Yuna, the woman who had spoken for humanity at that terrible first contact. He walked forward, holding an old book in his hands. It was worn and faded, its pages yellow with age. This is her journal, he said. The journal of Dr. Kim Yuna. She wrote in it the night she came home from the Union. After they had called her and all of us beasts, he opened the book carefully and began to read aloud. They called us beasts. They called us savages. They looked at our worst moments and decided that was all we were. But they are wrong. We are more than our history. We are more than our mistakes. Someday, they will see. Someday, they will understand what humanity truly is. And on that day, we will remember how they treated us. Not with revenge, but with truth. He closed the book and looked around the room. My great-grandmother spent her whole life believing in humanity. She believed that we could be better than our darkest moments. She believed that we could rise above cruelty, above revenge, above hate. He paused. This is that day. This is the day she wrote about. The question is, will we prove her right, or will we prove them right? The silence that followed was different from before. It was not angry silence, but thoughtful silence. President Yoon So-min stood. Her face was impossible to read. High Arbiter Ven, she said formally. Humanity has considered your request. Ven held his breath. We will help you, she said. But we have conditions. A wave of whispers swept through the hall. Ven's eyes widened with hope and fear. First, So-min continued. The Galactic Union will formally apologize for its treatment of humanity 150 years ago. This apology will be broadcast to all species, all worlds, everywhere. Ven nodded quickly. Yes, we will do this. Second, humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Union, with all rights and privileges of any other species. Again, Ven nodded. Of course, yes. Third, all Union military forces will be placed under human command for the duration of this war. You will follow our orders. You will trust our strategies. You will fight the way we tell you to fight. This time, Ven hesitated. This was asking them to give up everything, to trust the very species they had once called savage. I must consult with the other species, he said. So-min shook her head. You do not have time to consult. The Hollow is coming. Every hour you delay, more of your people die. Accept our terms, or leave. Ven closed his eyes. For 150 years, the Korath had led the Union. They had made the decisions, set the rules, judged who was worthy and who was not. Now they were being asked to bow. He thought of his grandfather, proud and certain, sending the humans away. He thought of the billions already dead, the worlds already lost, the species already erased from existence, and he made his choice. Slowly, with great difficulty, High Arbiter Ven knelt before the President of Earth. It was the deepest sign of respect his people could show. In 1,000 years of Korath history, no High Arbiter had ever knelt before anyone. We accept your terms, he said. On behalf of the Galactic Union, I apologize for the crimes of my grandfather and our people. We were wrong. We were blind. And we are grateful. The cameras captured everything. Across human space, people watched in silence as an alien leader knelt before their president. Some felt satisfaction. Some felt pity. And some, like Dr. Kim Do-hun, felt something else entirely, the strange, heavy feeling of history changing direction. President Yoon So-min reached down and helped Ven to his feet. We did not ask you to kneel, she said quietly. We only asked you to trust us. Ven looked into her eyes and saw something he had never expected. Kindness. Now, So-min said, her voice rising so everyone could hear. Let us go to war. Across 40 star systems, human ships began to move. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Engineers prepared weapons. Pilots checked their fighters. Humanity was going to war for people who had rejected them, not for revenge, not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. In his office, Dr. Kim Do-hun placed his great-grandmother's journal back on its shelf. He looked at her picture beside it, a young woman with determined eyes who had believed in humanity even when no one else did. You were right, he whispered. We remembered. And we rose. The front lines of the war were worse than any image could show. Burning worlds lit up the darkness of space. The wreckage of 1,000 ships drifted between the stars like the bones of dead giants. And everywhere, always, The Hollow waited vast swarms of black machines that moved with terrible purpose. Fleet Admiral Lee Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the HSS Defiance, and looked out at the end of the galaxy. Behind him, the largest fleet ever assembled in history spread across space: human warships, Korath cruisers, ships from a dozen different species, all flying together under one command. "Admiral," said Engineer Chohana, walking up beside him. "The final upgrades are complete. All Allied ships now have human targeting systems and communication equipment." Minho nodded. "How are the crews handling the changes?" Hana allowed herself a small smile. "Some of them are learning, others are complaining. The Korath especially do not like taking orders from humans." She paused. "But they are learning." In the weeks since humanity had entered the war, everything had changed. The Union species had fought the Hollow with their traditional methods: formal battle formations, predictable attack patterns, honorable engagement. They had followed rules that had worked for thousands of years. Against the Hollow, those rules were useless. The machines learned. They adapted. Every tactic used against them twice became worthless. They had no fear, no hesitation, no limit. They simply consumed and grew stronger. But humans had something the Hollow had never encountered: chaos. For all of history, humans had fought each other. They had developed warfare to an art form, creating strategies and tactics that no other species had ever imagined. They used deception. They struck from unexpected directions. They sacrificed pieces to win larger gains. They broke every rule when breaking rules meant victory. Admiral Minho had spent his first days showing the Union allies how humans fought. He showed them guerrilla warfare, small ships striking from hiding, hitting weak points, then vanishing before the enemy could respond. He showed them psychological operations using false signals, decoy fleets, and misinformation to confuse the Hollow's processing. He showed them decentralized command, each ship captain free to make decisions without waiting for orders, able to adapt instantly to changing situations. The aliens had been horrified. This was not how civilized beings fought. This was messy, unpredictable, almost savage. It was also working. For the first time since the war began, the Hollow was losing ground. Human tactics were too random for the machines to predict. Every time they adapted to one strategy, the humans changed to something completely different. The chaos of human warfare, the very thing that had made the Union call them beasts, was now saving the galaxy. "Admiral," said a communications officer. "Message from Lieutenant Yun Nari. She says her squadron is ready." Minho felt his stomach tighten. Nari was young, only 24 years old, but she was the best pilot in the fleet. She was also reckless, fearless, and exactly the person needed for the most dangerous mission of the war. "Put her through," he said. Nari's face appeared on the screen. She was grinning, her eyes bright with excitement. "Admiral, the Firebird squadron is ready to fly. Just say the word. You understand what you are being asked to do," Minho said carefully. "The Hollow's central hive ship is the heart of their operations in this sector. If we can destroy it, their coordination will collapse. But getting there—" He paused. "Many of you will not come back." Nari's grin did not fade. "We know, sir. We volunteered for this." Behind her, Minho could see the faces of her squadron, young men and women, all of them barely out of training, all of them ready to die. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why are you willing to do this?" Nari's expression became serious. "Because my grandmother was on the first ship that went to the Union. She was just a teenager then, part of the diplomatic support staff. She watched them call us animals. She carried that shame her whole life." The young pilot's eyes hardened. "I am not fighting for the aliens, Admiral. I am fighting to show them what my grandmother really was." Minho held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Firebird Squadron, you are cleared for launch. May fortune favor you." The squadron launched into the chaos of battle. Their small fighters dove through swarms of hollow drones, dancing between energy beams and cutting through enemy lines. Behind them, the main fleet pushed forward, drawing the attention of the Hollow's primary forces. Chohana monitored the mission from her station, her face tense with concentration. She had designed the weapon that Nari's squadron carried, a specialized virus that could infect the Hollow's systems. turning their own machines against each other, but it had to be delivered directly into the hive ship's core. Firebird Squadron has reached the outer defenses, she reported. They are taking fire. On the screens, Minho watched as the small fighters spiraled through impossible maneuvers. One by one, they began to fall. Destroyed by hollow weapons, overwhelmed by enemy numbers, each light that vanished was a human life, a young person who had chosen to die for a galaxy that had once rejected their kind. Firebird 7 is down, the communications officer said quietly. Firebird 3 is down. Firebird 9, gone. Only 4 ships remained when they reached the hive ship's outer shell. Lieutenant Yoon Nari led them through a narrow gap in the defenses, her fighter barely avoiding destruction with every turn. We are inside, she reported, her voice strained with effort. Approaching the core, Nari, Minho said. You do not have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted. Opening the deployment bay now. The last thing the fleet heard from Firebird Squadron was Nari's voice, calm and clear. Virus deployed. See you on the other side, Admiral. Then silence. For a terrible moment. Nothing happened. The hollow swarm continued to press forward. Their machines still coordinated, still deadly. Minho felt despair rise in his chest. They had failed. All those young people had died for nothing. Then the hive ship began to shake. Lights flickered across its massive form. Sections of it began firing on other sections. The perfect coordination of the hollow swarm dissolved into chaos as Hana's virus spread through their systems. Machine turned against machine, drone against drone. It is working, Hana whispered, her eyes wide. The virus is working. Admiral Minho did not hesitate. All ships, full attack. Push forward now. The combined fleet surged forward. Human ships led the charge, their tactics wild and unpredictable, their weapons blazing. Behind them came the Union vessels, finally fighting with hope instead of despair. Together, they tore through the confused hollow forces. The battle lasted 12 hours. Thousands of ships were destroyed. Millions of beings died, human and alien alike. But when the dust settled, the hollow swarm in this sector was broken. For the first time in the entire war, a major hollow force had been completely defeated. On the bridge of the Defiance, Minho stared at the wreckage that had been the hive ship. Somewhere in there, maybe, Nari and her squadron still lived. He had to believe that. He had to. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice would reach every ship, every species, every survivor. This is Admiral Lee Minho of the human fleet. What you saw today is what they rejected. This is what we are. Chaotic, unpredictable, savage, even, by your standards. But we fight not for your apology. We fight not for revenge. We fight because it is right. Remember that when you look at us. Remember that when you think of what humanity really is. Across the fleet, on ships crewed by beings who had once called humans beasts, there was silence. And then, slowly, something unexpected happened. They began to applaud. On Korath ships, on vessels from a dozen different species, beings who had never respected humans began to cheer. They had seen something today that changed everything they thought they knew. They had seen humans die for them. They had seen humans fight not with hatred but with purpose. They had seen humanity rise. 3 days later, rescue teams found Nari's fighter drifting in the wreckage of the hive ship. She was barely alive, her body broken, but she was breathing. When she woke up in the medical bay, the first thing she saw was Admiral Minho standing beside her bed. You did it, he said softly. You saved them all. Nari managed a weak smile. Told my grandmother I would make her proud. Minho nodded. You did. You made us all proud. Outside the medical bay windows, the stars burned bright. The war was not over. The hollow still threatened the galaxy, but for the first time, there was hope that had come from the very people the galaxy had rejected. The war lasted 3 more years. 3 years of battles across 1,000 star systems. 3 years of sacrifice, of loss, of humanity and alien fighting side by side against the darkness. 3 years that changed the galaxy forever. But finally, it was over. The last hollow swarm was destroyed in a battle above a world called Sanctuary, a fitting name. for it was there that the final survivors of a dozen species had gathered, waiting to learn if they would live or die. When the human fleet broke through the enemy lines and the hollow machines fell silent at last, the celebration could be heard across the entire planet. Admiral Lee Minho did not celebrate. He stood alone on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the wreckage that floated in space. So many ships, so many lives, human and alien both had given everything to reach this moment. He felt the weight of all those deaths pressing down on him, a burden he would carry forever. Admiral. Engineer. Johanna's voice was soft. The President is calling. The ceremony is about to begin. Minho nodded slowly. The ceremony. Of course. The galaxy wanted to celebrate, to honor the heroes who had saved them. He supposed he was one of those heroes, though he did not feel like one. He felt tired. He felt old. He felt empty, but he went anyway. Because that was what humanity did. They carried on. The rebuilt Galactic Union capital was magnificent. The old station had been destroyed early in the war, but a new one had risen in its place, larger, more beautiful, and for the first time in history, designed by humans and aliens working together. Its corridors were filled with beings of every species, all of them wearing symbols of unity and peace. In the center of the Great Hall, a memorial had been built. It was a wall of names, stretching from floor to ceiling, carved in crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Human names and alien names were listed together, organized not by species but by the date they had fallen. Here, in death, everyone was equal. President Yoon So-min stood before the memorial, her face solemn. She had aged in the last 3 years. The weight of leadership during war had taken its toll, but her eyes were still kind, still strong, still hopeful. High Arbiter Ven stood beside her. He too had changed. The proud, elegant alien who had first come to human space begging for help was gone. In his place was someone humbler, wiser, and perhaps, for the first time, truly grateful. The hall fell silent as Ven stepped forward to speak. His voice, that musical Korath voice, filled the space. 153 years ago, he began. My grandfather stood in a hall not so different from this one. He looked at a species that had traveled across the stars to meet us, and he told them they were not worthy. He called them beasts. He called them savages. He sent them away in shame. Ven paused, his purple eyes sweeping across the crowd, thousands of beings, human and alien, all watching him. My grandfather was wrong, he continued. He was wrong in the worst way possible. He looked at humanity and saw only their flaws, only their history, only their darkness. He did not see their courage. He did not see their compassion. He did not see the truth that is now written in blood across the stars, that humans are not beasts. They are the heart of this galaxy. He turned to face President Yoon So-min directly. On behalf of the Galactic Union, on behalf of every species that survives because of what humanity did, I offer this apology. We were blind. We were arrogant. And we are sorry. From this day forward, let it be known that humanity stands as an equal among us, not because they proved themselves in war, but because they proved themselves in mercy. They came to save those who had rejected them. That is a gift we can never repay. So-min accepted the apology with a simple nod. There were no angry words, no demands for further punishment, no celebration of victory over old enemies. There was only acknowledgement, acceptance, and the beginning of healing. Then something unexpected happened. A representative from each of the surviving species came forward, one by one, and placed a symbol of their world at the base of the memorial. It was an offering of gratitude, a recognition of the debt they owed. When they were finished, they turned to President So-min and spoke in unison. We offer humanity the leadership of the new Galactic Council. Will you guide us into the future? The hall held its breath. This was what empires fought for. This was what species dreamed of. The chance to lead the entire galaxy. So-min looked at the symbols, at the memorial, at the faces of aliens who had once seen her people as inferior. Then she smiled gently and shook her head. No, she said. We did not come here to rule you. We came to stand beside you. A murmur of surprise swept through the crowd. Humanity will take its place in the council as an equal member, nothing more, Soman continued. We will share our ideas, our technology, our ways of thinking, but we will not be your masters. That is not who we are. That is not who we want to be. High Arbiter Ven stared at her with something like wonder. You could have anything, everything. Why refuse? Soman's smile deepened. Because we learned something, a long time ago, about what power really means. It does not mean controlling others. It means lifting them up. It means standing together. That is the lesson we took from our darkest times. She gestured at the memorial. That is what all these people died for, not for an empire, but for a family. Later that day, after the ceremonies were over and the crowds had dispersed, Admiral Lee Minho made his way to a small hospital room in the station's medical wing. Lieutenant Yoon Nari was there, sitting up in bed, her body still wrapped in healing bandages but her eyes bright and alive. Admiral, she said, trying to salute. I heard the ceremony went well. Minho gently pushed her arm down. No saluting. You have done enough saluting for 10 lifetimes. He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down heavily. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I am retiring, Minho finally said, giving up my commission. I have seen enough war. Nari nodded slowly. What will you do? I do not know. Maybe teach. Maybe write. Maybe just sit on a beach somewhere and watch the waves. He smiled faintly. What about you? She looked out the window at the stars. They offered me command of a new ship, said I was a hero. She laughed softly. I do not feel like a hero. I just feel lucky to be alive. That is how real heroes always feel, Minho said. On a rebuilt world far from the station, Dr. Kim Do-hun sat in his study, writing the final pages of his book. It had taken him 3 years to complete 3 years of interviews, research, and remembering. Now it was almost finished. He typed the last sentence slowly, carefully, making sure every word was right. They rejected us, and we returned anyway. Not for revenge, not for glory, but because that is who humans are. We are the ones who reach out when others turn away. We are the ones who fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We are the ones who remember our worst moments and choose, every day, to be better. He sat back and looked at the title on the screen. They rejected us, and we returned. Anyway, his great-grandmother would have been proud. On the rebuilt world of Sanctuary, the sun was setting. Twin stars painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. In a park near the Memorial District, children were playing human children and alien children, running and laughing together without any thought of the history that had divided their peoples. A small human girl chased a young Korath boy around a fountain. They were both laughing so hard they could barely breathe. When they collapsed on the grass together, looking up at the colorful sky, they did not see enemies or allies, beasts or civilized beings. They just saw friends. An old Korath woman watched them from a bench nearby. Beside her sat an elderly human man, his face marked with scars from the war. They had been enemies once, on opposite sides of a divide that had lasted generations. Now they sat together in silence, watching the children play. Do you think they will remember? The Korath woman asked softly. The war? The rejection? All of it? The old man considered the question for a long time. Then he shook his head. No, he said. And that is the point. We remember so they do not have to. We carry the weight so they can run free. The woman nodded slowly. Perhaps that is the greatest gift of all. As the twin suns sank below the horizon and the stars began to appear, the children kept playing. They did not know about the 150 years of rejection. They did not know about the war, the sacrifice, the memorial filled with names. They knew only this moment, this world, this future that had been bought with blood and forgiven with mercy. And somewhere in the sky, among all those distant stars, the galaxy turned peacefully on, carrying within it the story of a species that had been called beasts, and had answered by becoming heroes. They rejected humanity, and humanity returned anyway, not with anger, not with revenge, but with something far more powerful, with hope.